During our class videos, you may hear our poets and playwrights use terms that are new to you. We have created a list of key terms and definitions that you can refer to at any point during our video lectures. This list is available on the Videos and Readings class page, where you can read it or download it as a PDF. If you would like to find and review these terms while you watch each class video, you can stop this video, go back to the Videos and Readings class page, and download the PDF. There you can play this video in each of the following class videos. If you have any questions about these terms, we encourage you to ask your teaching team in the weekly class discussions.
Megan Goherty is a playwright and performer whose work includes the musical Love, Jerry, the play Bad Panda, as well as solo shows Hillary Clinton Got Me Pregnant, Lady Macbeth and Her Pal Megan, and others. She has received the Jerome Fellowship for Playwriting and 3 Talkin' Broadway Awards. She earned her MFA in playwriting at the University of Texas in Austin and teaches dramatic literature and dramaturgy at the University of Iowa.
My name's Megan Goherty. I'm a playwright and a stand-up comedian. And I teach at the University of Iowa. So when I want to write a play, right, and just to be clear, I'm calling my multi-actor sort of traditional plays, get your actors together and put it on. I'm calling those plays. I'm calling my monologue stuff shows, even though those are constructed like plays. I'm going to call them shows. So right, and then there's my comedy. So when I want to write a play, usually what will hook me in is I'll have an image or a funny or interesting idea. And it's often sort of 2 things coming together at once, right? That'll be the place that I start. And so I start in this sort of like small scene or with these characters, and then the process of writing it is kind of backing up and fleshing out and saying, well, okay, well, where are we really and what's really sort of going on? And it's a lot of revision. It's a lot of like snorkeling in the dark. Like I'm like feeling my way. Like sometimes to torture myself, I love to read about writers who like outline everything before they begin and like, oh, what clarity and what, they're like, it's just such a breeze to write things. And I'm like, that's amazing. But I can't do it that way, or when I try to do it that way, the result is always very tepid. So I have to really spend a lot of time in the dark. I have to really spend a lot of time writing terribly and sort of feeling my way around to find the things that I find interesting or the things that are compelling. And then, right, the next slew of drafts is then, well, what do other people find interesting and compelling? And how can I yoke those 2 things together? So that's how I find my way into a play. The way I find my way into a solo show, most of my work is semi-autobiographical, which is a big fancy way of saying that everything is true except for the parts that I made up. And the way that I find myself into those works, I'm usually prompted by a revelation that I have had, a revelation or a transformation that I want to explore or unpack, or sometimes several revelations, or a question that I am wrestling with, and that's a different path in, right? So when I write a play, I start with I have an image or an idea, and then discover the question, and it's not quite so tidy as to say it's the opposite of that for a solo show, but let's be tidy for a minute. It's sort of the opposite of that for a solo show, and then I start with a question or a revelation, and then have to expand out into character and plot. So my latest solo show is called Lady Macbeth and Her Pal Megan, and it talks about the sort of premise of the play. The premise of the show is that my friend tells me that I can't play Lady Macbeth because Lady Macbeth is a tragic figure of powerful darkness, and I am the human equivalent of a golden retriever. And so I set out to prove her wrong, and then in so doing, have to re-examine not only what I think of Lady Macbeth, but also who I think I am as a woman and as a stand-up comedian, right? So that's kind of what that play is about. But where that play started for me is the revelation that I had that comedy, that all of the sort of, the play is a lot about stand-up comedy and the process and act of stand-up comedy, especially like what it's like to be a woman in stand-up comedy. And a lot of the conventional wisdom that I had heard about comedy and the way that we talk about comedy is with this violent language. And the comedy, you're going to go out there, you're going to kill. You kill or be killed. You're going to murder them. And this sort of killing. And this revelation that I had, that for me, comedy is not about killing. That comedy is not about violence at all. That comedy is in fact about sex. That comedy is about love. It's about creating a crowd out of a group of individuals, and it's about fostering a sense of play and ecstasy in the audience, and that is a very different way than the way we talk about comedy. We tend to talk about comedy in this violent way, and I was like, well, I don't think that's true at all. And so that was a revelation that I had, one of maybe 5, that I based my solo show around. But here is where theater is different from comedy, right? Because stand-up comedy, I could come out and be like, hey, you guys, listen up. I totally had a revelation. What we're doing here is sort of like a sex act. It's creative. It's fine. Like, I could come out and just sort of inform my audience about what the things I think and feel. But you can't inform in the theater. To inform an audience is death, right? It's boring. No one wants to be informed. What audiences want is they want to discover. They want to go on a journey and discover, right? And so my job is to, in that show in particular, is to lead my audience through my own character's sort of journey, allow my audience to discover, hey, you know what, I don't think that comedy, so that they can make those discoveries, right? That's much more powerful. I must lead them to that. I must illustrate for them, right? It's show, don't tell. Instead of telling them what I want them to know, I must show them, and then they come to that conclusion. And that's very satisfying, powerful. That's the essence of drama. It's the essence of theater. So voice is an interesting question, especially for me as an artist, because when we talk about voice as writers, right, the writerly voice, like, what's your voice? It's the voice of the piece. When we're talking about my work, my writerly voice is very close to my actual speaking voice, is a literal voice, right? This is where theater has a complication that, say, fiction writing doesn't have, and that there will be actual literal human voices saying these words aloud. And one of the things that I have to be on guard for is that I have to, anything I write, I in turn then have to speak, right? And so a lot of times in my early drafts or in my earlier work, my earlier monologue work, I would compose them on the keyboard, and then I would go and say them out loud and be like, well, this is unspeakable. Like, who says heretofore? Nobody says heretofore. Like, if I find myself writing any words like hence, do you know what I mean? Like, then I'm writing. I'm not actually communicating. So one of the techniques that I use to find my voice is I just say it out loud. A lot of my early drafts are just me speaking out loud, and so the typing up down, right? The writing down is the last step in the writing. A lot of the writing comes from talking, comes from actual talking. And so in that way, like when you read one of my monologue scripts, it doesn't read as smoothly as say a blog post might, or something or an essay, or something that I have written to be read, right? It just doesn't read as smoothly because it's meant to be spoken. It's meant to be spoken aloud. And that's true that's a really, really, really true of my monologue plays. But it's also true in theater in general. One of the things that students of theater have to learn, and it's a skill, is how to read a play and imagine it in their minds. And that's a skill that sometimes we forget about. We sort of take it for granted when we are teaching theater. But to read a play aloud and imagine it and hear the pauses, hear the subtext, takes time and effort, right? Because plays are not meant to be read. They're just not meant to be read on a sofa. They're meant to be performed. And so one workaround is to get your friends together and read the play out loud. And then in reading it out loud, you go, oh, I see. I get it now. I didn't get it before, but now hearing it out loud, I get it. So voice, it's in there somewhere, right? The other thing, and I think this is really important about voice, is that, talk about how do we find the voice, how to develop a voice of a piece. I don't know that answer. And honestly, I think that your writerly voice, the voice of the piece, will reveal itself to you. That we can't really impose a voice for very long. It will fall apart almost immediately. And that I think about, when I was starting out as a writer, and I'm like, oh, do I have a voice? I got to develop my voice. And I felt the same way about it as I felt when I was 12 and I wanted to develop, breasts. Like, when will I grow them? Like, how? I'll do these exercises, but you can't do those exercises, right? Like, you will develop, my 12-year-old self had to learn that I will develop breasts when and whether and how, and none of those are up to me. And I can't decide, well, these are I can't put in an order for the kind that I want. They're just going to be who I am, barring some major reconstructive surgery. Similarly, I read writers who write very differently than me, right? Really poetical, lyrical writers. I'm just like, oh, it's wonderful, gorgeous. I can't write that way. And to try to write that way rings false. I have to write the way that I write. I have to speak the way that I speak. And the way that I speak is very plain and very irreverent. That's it. That's just who I am. That's who I am as an artist. And all the wishing in the world isn't going to make me into some, florid lyricist. It's just not going to. And once I sort of accepted that and allowed voice to reveal itself to me, I took a lot of the anxiety out of writing.
Play Bad Panda, as well as solo shows Hillary Clinton Got Me Pregnant, Lady Macbeth and Her Pal Megan, and others. She has received the Jerome Fellowship for Playwriting and 3 Talkin' Broadway Awards. She earned her MFA in playwriting at the University of Texas in Austin and teaches dramatic literature and dramaturgy at the University of Iowa.
My name's Megan Goherty. I'm a playwright and a stand-up comedian. And I teach at the university.
As a PDF. If you would like to find and review these terms while you watch each class video, you can stop this video, go back to the Videos and Readings class page, and download the PDF. There you can play this video and each of the following class videos. If you have any questions about these terms, we encourage you to ask your teaching team in the weekly class discussions.
Megan Goherty is a playwright and performer whose work includes the musical Love, Jerry, the
University of Iowa. So when I want to write a play, right, and just to be clear, I'm calling my multi-actor sort of traditional plays, get your actors together and put it on. I'm calling those plays. I'm calling my monologue stuff shows, even though those are constructed like plays. I'm going to call them shows. So right, and then there's my comedy. So when I
During our class videos, you may hear our poets and playwrights use terms that are new to you. We have created a list of key terms and definitions that you can refer to at any point during our video lectures. This list is available on the Videos and Readings class page, where you can read it or download it as...
When I want to write a play, usually what will hook me in is I'll have an image or a funny or interesting idea. And it's often sort of two things coming together at once, right? that'll be the place that I start. And so I start in this sort of like small